Today, we'll be continuing our journey through story structure by following Lesson 2, Story Structure Lesson 2. But first, a quick review. We had Lesson 1 the other day. We talked about the monomyth, the hero's journey. Give me some stages. Give me some archetypes.
Shadow.
Jar
Jar.
Hero. Mentor.
Threshold
Guardians.
Allies. Mentors.
Crossing the threshold.
Meeting the mentor.
Ordeal, or the abyss. Very good. Return of the elixir. Normal world, ordinary world, special worlds.
The road back.
Resurrection, refusal of the call, the herald.
The call to action.
Tricksters. Okay, excellent. So, good. Remember, as you are watching your movies, as you are watching your television shows, as you are consuming your media over the next several days, weeks, months ahead, I want you to have that in the back of your mind because you're going to notice those things again and again and again. You're going to start to see them more so than you ever have before. So the lesson that we're going with today is we're going to delve deeper into different story types. So the monomyth, or the hero's journey, is sort of all-inclusive. Every story has elements of the monomyth. Every story has elements of the hero's journey. Today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into different types of stories, different story structures that often commonly appear within the films that we consume. Most of what we talk about today is going to come from a guy named Blake Snyder. He wrote a very influential book in the film community called Save the Cat. You may have heard of it. It's on my shelf if you ever want to borrow it. It's a pretty easy read. It's not heavy reading. It's not academic reading. It's very anecdotal. You could read it in a day or two if you really wanted to. If you ever go to film school or take a screenwriting class, chances are you've probably heard of this book, or you will hear about this book. I know I have students who have taken my class who go to film school and a year or two later, send me a message and say, hey, this is a required textbook for my class. I already know all about it. That's awesome. So Blake Snyder was a screenwriter in Hollywood. He wrote this book. It's what he's most famous for, honestly. Very influential in the screenwriting community. Most people really, really like it. There are some people that really, really hate it. And we'll talk about why and how you can both be right. But today we're discussing specifically loglines and movie genres. So we're going to start with loglines, and then we're going to move into the movie genres. And it's not quite what you think it is. So for starters, next week you are all going to pitch. You're all going to show up on Tuesday, and you each have to pitch your own idea. Now, most of you have done pitches before with me in the past as juniors, but this will be your first big senior narrative pitch. There it is. I hate that sound. So what we'll be doing is you need to do what we call the standard elevator pitch. Now, I like to play this like the real world. So like in this context, I am your producer, and you're here trying to pitch me your idea so that you get the funding and the money and me to sign off, and you can actually make your film. So how long, we've talked about this before, I think, but how long is your typical elevator pitch? A minute? Six what?
No, it was 30 seconds.
30 seconds? 6 parsecs?
Elevators are it's a minute, 60 seconds.
60 seconds, what?
That's a minute, Owen. Yeah, but it sounds
So a standard elevator pitch is 90 seconds. It's a minute and a half. Okay? If you can tell your story to someone who's never heard it before, if you can get them to understand your story, your concept, in about a minute and a half, chances are you have a good story. It's going to make sense. It might work. If you can't do it in a minute and a half, if you can't boil all that down into one basic concept in a minute and a half, then you might need to reconsider some things. Maybe you have a story that has too many moving parts, or a story that's not really coming out in clarity like it should. Ideally, you should be able to walk up to any person and have a story idea, and the first thing they're going to say is, well, what is it? What is your story? What is it? And if you don't have an answer to that question that you can answer succinctly and quickly in about 90 seconds or less, maybe you don't have it. Maybe you just have little bits and pieces, but you haven't flushed out the it. So in his book, Save the Cat, Blake Snyder talks about, well, what is it? He talks about the pitch, the ideal pitch. And he boils it down to you need to have what he calls a logline, a one-line description of your film. Can you take your story idea, your one idea, and boil it down to one sentence? One line. If you can do that, then maybe you have a good idea. Maybe it's clear. Maybe it's clear what that story is, and maybe it will work. If you can't do that, then that's a sign that maybe you don't have a clear idea of what your film is, in which case you need some more clarity so that you can write what you need to write to make an effective film. So a logline is a one-line description of your film. And before you ask, yes, you are all required, when you pitch next week, to have a logline for your film. Okay? So a one-line description of your film. In his book, he says, here's an example. So a newly married couple must spend Christmas Day at each of their 4 divorced parents' homes. That's a film called 4 Christmases, okay? What is it? That's the it. There it is, right? A just hired employee goes on a company weekend and soon discovers someone's trying to kill him. The Retreat, okay? I'd watch that movie, yeah. I'd watch that movie. That sounds good. A risk-averse teacher plans on marrying his dream girl, but must first accompany his overprotective future brother-in-law, a cop, on a ride-along from hell. Okay, that's the movie Ride-Along. That's actually one that the author wrote, I believe. One-line description of your film. Now, in his book, he talks about what makes a good logline, what makes an effective logline. You're trying to sell your movie. You're trying to get your screenplay picked up. You're trying to get the producer to look up from his notes in his busy schedule and cock his head a little bit and say, that's an interesting idea. I'm intrigued. Tell me more. Right? So how are you going to do that? How can you sell that? Well, he suggests that there's a few ways that you can do it. The first, have an interesting bit of irony in your log line. The best log lines, the best one-liners have something to hook us, something to grab us, right? Some irony, some humor, right? A mental picture. Can you picture it? Can I see in my head what it is that your movie might look like? The audience and cost, okay? This affects a little bit more, this is a little more on the industry side of things, maybe not so much in the freestyle side of things, but more in the industry side of things. Who is your film for? How much is it going to cost to make? And finally, he says if you have a killer title, that's like the exclamation point on your pitch. You got a killer title, it just really knocks it out of the park, and that can really get your film from the drawing board to the production stages. So for starters, irony. Yes, question? Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so irony. Something to hook your interest. Okay, you guys know this. You guys have taken English classes before. When you're writing something, you need a hook. You need to grab people's attention. People need to be drawn away from whatever it is they were thinking about or paying attention to whatever it is you're thinking about and paying attention to. You've got to grab people. You've got to hook their interest. Irony is a great way to do that. A little bit of humor or a little bit of irony. A cop comes to LA to visit his estranged wife, and her office building is taken over by terrorists. Okay, that's the movie Die Hard. How many of you have seen Die Hard? So good. So good. Built, single-handedly created the action movie genre. Okay? But that's the entire premise of the movie. And there's irony there, right? Like a cop comes to LA to visit his estranged wife. They're separated. He's coming back to reconcile with his wife, and her office building gets taken over by terrorists. What are the odds? What are the odds? Right? There's it's something interesting. It's humorous. There's irony there. Okay? A businessman falls in love with a hooker. A businessman falls in love with a hooker he hires to be his date for the weekend. It's Pretty Woman. How many of you seen Pretty Women? Okay? No? Only one of you? Okay? There's a little bit of irony there. Right? The businessman falling in love with the hooker that he hired for the week. Oh, that's Julia Roberts. So, I mean, we'll cut him some slack, I guess. But, all right. There's a little bit of irony there. Okay, so your logline. A little bit of humor, a little bit of irony, something to grab people's interests. Something that you can say to one person and they'll look at you and say, I'm intrigued. I would watch that movie. Okay? The mental picture. This is the show, don't tell. Okay, you've heard me drill show, don't tell into your head a million times for over a year now. Okay, this rule still applies even in your one-line description. Can you see the movie in your head? Okay? A risk-averse teacher plans on marrying his dream girl but must first accompany his overprotective future brother-in-law, a cop, on a ride-along from hell. Okay, I can see that movie in my head. A risk-averse teacher, not just a teacher, a risk-averse teacher. Use descriptive words. Okay, so I know he doesn't want to take risks. He doesn't want to try new things, right? He's playing it safe his whole life. I can picture that. I can picture that person in my head. Plans on marrying his dream girl, not just any girl, his dream girl. There's high stakes here. Okay, he's planning on marrying his dream girl, but first must accompany his overprotective future brother-in-law, a cop, on a ride-along. Not just a ride-along, but on the ride-along from hell. Okay? Really descriptive. It creates a rich mental picture. I can see this movie in my head. Okay? So your logline needs to be descriptive. I need to be able to picture it. If you can get me to see your film, show, don't tell. If you can get me to see your film by showing me in my head your film as opposed to you telling me, that's far more effective. Okay? She's the perfect woman until she has a drink. A movie called Blind Date. I have not seen it. But that's descriptive. I can imagine that movie in my head. It opens the doors to all kinds of possibilities. I'm sitting here wondering, what could this be? Like, how might this person be? How is she no longer the perfect woman? And I'm curious to see in which direction this story can go. So it creates a nice mental picture. All right, the audience and cost. This one, again, a little more important when you're outside of freestyle and you're actually trying to sell something or get your movie made by a production studio or something like that. But in the world and context of freestyle, I like to play the role of producer, and I like to try to mimic that as much as possible. So that is something that I want you to think about. The audience and cost. This attracts the studio buyers. It gives the idea for the cost. If I'm a producer and you are pitching your idea to me as a producer, I'm sitting here trying to think in my head as you pitch, how much is this going to cost me? What can I do here and there? What am I required to get for this film? What am I required to do? I need to do special effects for this? Am I going to need to outsource this people or this group of people or this studio? How much is this going to cost me? Who is this film for? What demographic is this film for? Is this 18 to 25-year-old men? 35 and up women? Is it all of the above? Like, what is it? Like, studios try to target these demographics. Every once in a while, they have something that's what's called a high concept film, which is something that's supposed to hit all the demographics. Those are like the Harry Potters and the big blockbusters that appeal to a wide array of people, okay? So think about who your audience is, all right? A newly married couple must spend Christmas Day at each of their 4 divorced parents' homes. That's the movie 4 Christmases. Now, as a producer, I can look at that and I can say to myself, okay, I can see what that is. Okay, I'm going to need 4 different homes. Okay, that shouldn't be too hard. I need 4 locations, but none of them are too extravagant. I don't need to shoot in the city. I don't need to shoot, at the beach or anything like that. So that's not a big issue. I'm not going to need any special effects for this. All right, I'm not going to need any green screening. I'm not going to need any of this or any of that. In fact, 4 homes, gosh, if I could get 4 houses on the same street, I wouldn't even need to move my cast and crew and equipment. I could just go from house to house and then shoot B-roll of them traveling elsewhere and edit that in. See what I'm saying? As a producer, this is stuff that we think about, right? So we're saying to ourselves, okay, that's not too expensive. I can produce this movie pretty cheaply, okay? And as a producer, if they're looking at your film and they're saying this is a good, interesting film, it has irony, it's interesting, I'm intrigued, and I'm looking at the cost and saying, that's not going to cost me that much to do, well, guess what? It's more likely that your film is going to get picked up. All right, and finally he says the exclamation point on all of this is having a really nice killer title. The killer title is like a short log line in and of itself. It's like the log line for the log line. All right, it's got all of the things that we just talked about, but it's in just the title, just a word or two. Okay, it says what it is. Legally Blonde. This is a great title. Legally Blonde. It's a great movie. Legally Blonde. It's a legal movie. It's about a blonde. She's legally blonde. It's a play on words. It has irony. It says what it is. Legally Blind versus Legally Blonde. Yeah, okay. It's a great title. It's a great title. Ride Along says what it is. Ride along. It's a ride along, but it's also like, come, ride along, right? Ride along. Okay? 4 Christmases. Kind of boring, but says exactly what it is. It's 4 Christmases. A nuclear family. That's kind of clever, right? It's a nuclear family. This one's about it's a nuclear family because they're getting exposed to radiation and stuff like that. So that's kind of clever, right? Die Hard. It's hard for him to die. Die Hard, right? It's a good title. It's a good title. It's a good title. So, what is your title? What is your title going to be? Is it going to be the kind of title that draws people in, says what it is, so on and so forth. So what's your log line? I want you to take a couple minutes, take out your phone. I'm going to let you pull out your phone. Okay? Use whatever typing app you use on your phone. You can text it to yourself if you want, or use a note app or whatever. I want you right now to take a couple minutes and come up with a log line for your film. A log line and a title. Okay?
Which film?
Your film. The one that you plan to pitch. Okay? You're pitching on Tuesday, so if you must have some idea. If you don't have an idea, now's a good opportunity to come up with one. So take a few minutes. Create a log line for your film, a one-line description that has irony, that draws people in, that says what it is. Okay? Come up with the title, come up with the log line. Okay. Wrap it up. Does anyone have one that they're semi-confident in? Like, hey, I think I kind of have a decent log line here. Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It's
what's your title?
Title's Fun Police.
Fun Police.
And it's a happy-go-lucky new kid must outwit and outplay the oppressive, fun-hating police force when his mother gets thrown in the slammer.
Okay, a happy-go-lucky. Say it again.
Happy-go-lucky new kid.
A happy-go-lucky new kid
Must outwit and outplay the oppressive.
fun-hating police force
When his mother gets thrown
in the slammer. Okay. What's the title?
Fun Police.
Fun Police. Okay. Hudson, go ahead.
This is like very basic.
That's all right. Go for
I
it.
was thinking, so the title is Her Last Supper.
Her Last Supper.
Yeah.
Okay.
A teenage girl from a religious family is stalked by a cult.
A teenage girl from a religious family is stalked by a
Cult.
cult. Oh, a cult. I am intrigued.
Stalked.
Stalked by a cult. By a cult.
I heard stalked by a cold. But that's
Yeah, I kind of did too. Stalked by a cult. Okay, cool. Robin, you had one?
It's called Private Eye. Two stressed, overprotective helicopter parents with 3 kids need some time away but end up monitoring their kids the entire date night.
Okay, what's it called?
Private Eye.
Private Eye. Okay, Private Eye. So 2 overprotective helicopter parents. What is it?
With 3 kids.
With 3 kids.
Need some time away but end up monitoring their kids.
Need some time away, but end up monitoring their kids throughout the entire date night.
Yeah.
Basically. Okay, cool, good. Yeah, Josh, one more.
It's pretty bad. But
All right. Don't poison the well. Don't poison the well.
I feel more confident.
Okay.
2 newly graduated youths attempt to make it to the top of the lawn care game and work for Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman.
It's called lawn,
2 youths?
It's called Get Lawn Mowned.
Get
Like-
lawn mowned. Wow. Okay. All right. On that note. Okay. For your pitches on Tuesday, you must all begin your pitch with your log line. Okay? You don't have to start your pitch with your movie title. You can end it with your movie title, but the movie title's got to be in there. You just start it with your movie title, end it with your movie title, but you must begin with your log line. The what is it? Grab my interest. Hook your interest. Make the producer turn his head and say, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Will you say that after every long?
No, I will not.
Only if he is.
Only if I really am intrigued. All right, so be prepared. Be prepared with that. It will also need to be on your written synopsis, which you will have to turn in after you pitch, as you've done in the past. All right, we're going to shift gears now and move on to the next section of what I want to talk about from Blake Snyder's book, Save the Cat, which is movie genres. This is not the movie genres that you might think initially. We're not talking about sci-fi films and horror flicks and Western films and comedies. It's not that kind of movie genre. The movie genres that he's addressing and that we're going to be talking about are story structure types. Okay? How is the story written? How does the story work? I got a great quote here from the book that I really, really like. It says, "Listen to Spielberg or Scorsese talk about movies. They know and can quote from hundreds. And I don't mean quote as in recite lines from. I mean quote as in explain how each movie works. Movies are intricately made emotion machines." I love that. I love that. Remember last year when I told you that great filmmakers are great manipulators? Right? Okay? Movies are intricately made emotion machines. They are Swiss watches of precise gears and spinning wheels that make them tick. You have to be able to take them apart and put them back together again in the dark, in your sleep. And your knowledge of a few movies is not enough. It is also not enough to know all of the movies of the last 5 years. You have to go back, see the lineage of many types of movies, know what movies begot what in the line of succession, and how the art was advanced by each. True originality can't begin until you know what you're breaking from. Okay? So I love that quote. I think it boils it all down to a main point, which is you need to understand movies. Like, you need to understand how they work. You need to understand, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling in this moment in the film? Well, it's because the story was written a certain way and it was designed to make you feel a certain way at a certain moment in the film. You need to understand how movies harken back to other movies and how they learned and grew from all these different films. Okay? To really understand movies. It's not just understanding the film language, but it's understanding how all the film language and the writing and the story structure come together to create this cascade of emotion and feeling and thought and just the experience of watching a story unfold in front of your eyes. All right, so with that in mind, these are the 10 movie genres. Blake Snyder says that every movie that you've ever seen can fit into one of these 10 movie genres. All of them can be fit into one of these 10 movie genres. He says there are only 10 story structures when it comes to film. And they are thus: Monster in the House, Golden Fleece, Out of the Bottle, Dude with a Problem, Rites of Passage, Buddy Love, The Why Done It, The Fool Triumphant, Institutionalized, and Superhero.
I've never seen a movie like number 10. So.
Never seen a superhero movie?
Nope.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, so what I'm going to do is, rather than have me stand at the front of the room and get long-winded and drone on and on about each and every one of these things, I thought it would be better for each of you to research one of these things and then stand up here and teach it to the rest of us. That way, at the end of the day, if I sat up here and said every single one of them, at the end of the day, maybe you remember them, maybe you don't. But if you do it, at the end of the day, at least you're going to know one of them really, really well, right? So I've got a bunch of numbers here in a bucket. You're going to choose a number, and that will be the genre that you are going to research. I'm going to share with you the chapters from this book. You will read it, you will think about it, you will research it, you will find some examples. There are some examples given in the chapter, but I want you to think of some examples of your own as well. And then when we're ready, we'll each take a turn. You're going to come up here, you're going to teach us everything that you learned, and we will learn from you and your experience about what movie genre you had to research, okay? Okay, up first we have Monster in the House. Stand right there.
Okay.
Right there. Right there. Yeah, on the Illuminati. That's perfect.
Oh.
Okay.
Never noticed that.
Go ahead.
So Monster in the House, pretty simple. There's a monster in a house. But it's a little, obviously it's broader than that. Like, for example, Jurassic Park, the house would be the park, and the monster, the dragons, the dinosaurs. So I guess the rules, as he stated in the book, basically has to be a confined area, because otherwise there's no tension. Like, the main character has to be stuck trying to hide from this thing, or trying to figure out a way to kill it. And typically, the character, or one of the characters in the beginning, makes some type of mistake that leads to the monster's creation, or the monster showing up and killing everybody. And the characters that survive are usually the ones who realize the mistake and set out to fix it. Yeah.
Good. So that's basically the principle. I mean, the rule is essentially don't die. That's essentially the rule. Something or someone is after our characters, and Hudson's right. It's in a confined space. In Jurassic Park, it's the park. In Jaws, it's the ocean. It's just about every horror movie everywhere. They're trapped in some place trying to evade something or someone or some evil, some monster, some scenario. And often there is some type of sin that they are paying for. right? It's the people who made the mistake of creating this monster. Or it's the person, this is the person who gets eaten first because instead of running away when they should have run away, they're like, no, let's check it out. I want to know what this is. And then they die. This is the couple making out in the car in the woods, right? Who dies first because they shouldn't be doing that, right? Okay? So yeah, monster in the house. Doesn't have to be a literal monster. Doesn't have to be a literal house, but it needs to be some type of evil, some type of chasing entity that's going after these people, and the rules are basically don't die. Thank you, Hudson. Good work. Oh, examples? Do you need some more examples?
Oh yeah, I mean there are a bunch.
Okay, go ahead.
Jaws of Jurassic Park.
Jaws, Jurassic Park.
Like Alien is an example.
Alien, good.
What else? There's plenty. I'm blanking because there's so many. Yes, the thing.
Basically any horror flick.
Scream.
Ever.
Yeah, like horror movies in general.
Yeah. Great. Tremors.
Oh yeah.
Tremors is a good one. I love Tremors. All right, up next, the Golden Fleece.
So, basically, the synopsis of every movie that has this plot is someone wants something, so they have to do stuff, and then they get that thing. So there's this one movie. It's from this like small studio in Emeryville. It's Finding Nemo. Do you guys know it? Yeah. But that like literally is the plot. He goes and he finds his son. He has to go through challenges. But then like other examples are like Star Wars. Like half the posters on this wall. The Wizard of Oz, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. Yeah, they all want something, and then they have to do stuff, and then they get the thing.
So these are often quest stories. The term Golden Fleece comes from an old Greek myth. Anyone know the what's it called?
Argonauts, Jason and the Argonauts.
What?
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Jason and the Golden Fleece.
And the Golden Fleece, okay. So if you're familiar with that story, they're actually going after a golden fleece. I'm familiar with that story because DuckTales did an episode on it once when I was a kid. But it's a quest, and it's typically a team of characters, oftentimes a large group of people. So Wizard of Oz is a good example. You've got Dorothy and a team of people questing after something, trying to achieve something, trying to obtain a treasure, trying to get something to solve their problems, seeking some kind of a prize at the end. So personally, I love golden fleeces. A lot of my favorite movies happen to be golden fleeces. You might notice that some of your favorite movies fit one of these genres because we like the same story over and over and over again. We just like hearing it differently. So anyway, thank you. Good job.
Yeah, Robin.
All right, out of the bottle. Out of the bottle.
Okay, this is like something happens. Basically, there's like a character that's like, I wish I had a, and then it happens, and then they like have to deal with the consequences. First one that came to mind was like Freaky Friday, right? Like I don't think my mom's life is very hard, and I hate my life. What if we switch places?
The original one, not the one with Lindsay Lohan.
What do you have against Lindsay Lohan?
I'm just saying the original. The original one's better.
Okay. So like other examples, so it's mostly, it doesn't have to, but it normally includes like magic. It's like Going on 30, Freaky Friday, Aladdin, like Herbie the Love Bug, Nanny McPhee, Mary Poppins, Jumanji, Ella Enchanted. They just like, what if this happens? And then it happens. And then they're like, oh dang it, I don't want to live with this. And then they have to like somehow like remedy what they wished for.
Good. So it's exactly what Robin said. You've all seen this story before. I really wish I had this. My life is so hard because of this, and I wish that I had this. And then they get this. And then they have to deal with it, and they have to deal with the consequences. So Jim Carrey has been typecasted in many of these genre types of films. So you can think of The Mask, Liar Liar, Bruce Almighty, right? Those are all Jim Carrey movies in which he pretty much tells the same story and plays the exact same character. Ben and Josh, the film that you made for us last year, Sticky, was an out of the bottle. Where we really wish we had this, and then something magical happens, and now, now it's not what it's cracked up to be, and we've got to deal with that, right? So we learn a lesson or a moral from that experience. These are really easy stories to tell in a short period of time. So an 8 to 10 minute film can fit very nicely into an out of the bottle. We've had a number of freestyle films that have gone this route for their narrative projects, and they work very, very well because they don't need a lot of time or build up. They can establish it, they can move through the second act, and then they can resolve it in the third, and it's a nice, clean, contained story. And it's often very well executed because the story structure lends itself very well to our particular time frame. So something to keep in mind.
Normally there's only like one main character. There can be like a couple other ones, but like
Yeah.
mostly it's like three
Yeah.
people that you actually care about in the
Right.
whole movie. So that
Yeah.
makes it
So it makes it easier. All right, dude, we're the problem.
Dude, you have
Let's just jump into it.
Let's just jump into it.
Okay, so basically it's like an ordinary guy who finds himself in like a really extraordinary circumstance. So he's like a pretty sympathetic character, which is really easy to like for the audience to relate to. And basically he goes through like this emotional journey where he has to dig within himself to conquer, and then he has like character development and stuff like that.
So the important thing to remember with this one is that it's an ordinary character. This is the everyman. This is someone that we can all relate to. This is the ordinary character thrust into a very extraordinary circumstance. Keep that in mind because we're going to come back to that a little bit later, all right? Basically, it's a dude and a problem. Okay, so you have examples for us?
Yeah, the ones in the book were Die Hard, Titanic, and Schindler's List, and then I
Okay.
also picked out like Monsters, Inc. And then
Okay.
And then I was debating on Scott Pilgrim. But
Not Scott Pilgrim, but I can see why you might think that.
yeah.
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 Yeah, we'll come back to Scott
He's
Pilgrim.
a dude and he has a problem.
Okay, good. Die Hard is a good example. Schindler's List, that's a good example. So, okay. Rites of Passage. This is a hard one.
Yeah, it's really boring.
Rites of Passage. You can stand up, please.
I could.
You can stand up. You're presenting to the class.
Get me.
All right. Are you ever just really sad and life sucks?
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, the Rites of Passage movies are like that. So they're basically movies that are about growing up or life in general. So they're really boring and basically like examples would be like a movie about growing up, like puberty or divorce. Basically, it's movies that represent the human nature. And the main character there's one solid main character, and it's the person who's going through this change. And then the threat or force that they're fighting for is it's unseen or basically inevitable. And the conflict is more about accepting the force rather than avoiding it. Yeah,
So you have some examples?
I do. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Big, starring Tom Hanks. It's a really good movie.
It is a good movie.
And
Wait, what is
and
that
the new thing by Bo Burnham called 8th Grade. I think
Oh.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it.
Okay.
And that I think fits.
So Rites of Passage can be a little bit difficult to pinpoint. The important thing to remember is that it's about characters. It's about real life problems. These are oftentimes, as Owen alluded to, kind of sad, dramatic stories, all right? The character finds out they have a terminal illness and they're going to die, and they must come to deal with that. They must come to terms with that. They're going through a messy divorce. They're losing custody of their child. They've lost their job, and their life is turning completely upside down. So heavy dramas. They face these big life problems. They try to fix them, and eventually they don't fix them, basically. And they have to learn to accept the change that is happening in their life. Okay? So, yes?
Wait, isn't Big like an out of the bottle one? I thought he becomes big by magic. Right?
He does become big by magic, and I think that would be, yeah, that could be an out of the bottle.
Both. They can be both.
Debatable. Okay, yes.
Is Dead Poets Rites of Passage?
No, that's something else.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
I thought about that, and I was thinking about that as we went through this, and I think it might be. I would need to rewatch it again because I haven't seen it since it came out. But I think that might be a Rites of Passage. Bridge over Terabithia. Rites of Passage. Okay, I know, I hated it too.
Good book.
Yeah, that's a Rites of Passage. Okay, so films like of that ilk. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Buddy Love.
Get out.
So, two opposing tribes,
That's not what it is.
and they reconcile because they love each other. No, but Buddy Love is pretty much the big thing is that it's like a person or best friend. It doesn't have to be best friend, but the big thing is that it's about like two individuals whose lives would be less without the other person. That's pretty much the whole thing, but there are a bunch of like subsets of it. It can be between like a pet and a person, like E.T., I guess. like family love, like I don't know, and then just like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and then like Romeo and Juliet kind of, and it's just like, yeah, it's a friendship story. It's like about two people, not just one, because one person is boring.
Okay, so buddy loves a character that's incomplete without the other. These are often romance stories. Okay, so every romantic comedy that you've ever seen, if they're giving equal amount of time to the two protagonists, not the one, but the two protagonists, then these are often buddy loves. Okay, people who hate each other at the beginning and then end up loving each other by the end, that's often a buddy love. Okay, and as Josh said, yes, these can be between an animal and a person, right? These can be pet stories. Air Bud is a buddy love, right? Romeo and Juliet is a buddy love. What are some other examples?
Would Up be buddy love or would it be Rite of Passage?
Probably wouldn't it be gold.
I would say it's probably a buddy love.
Buddy
Yeah.
love?
Yeah.
Well, because it's about being lonely and like being alone, and then he like.
Yeah. No, I would say it's probably about buddy love. There's some other story elements in there. Buddy love is one of the genres that you can actually sort of subset into a lot of other genres. For example, people. No, that yeah. For example, sometimes there are Golden Fleeces that have sort of two main characters, and sometimes they call them buddy fleeces. Yeah.
Would that be Up then?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Possibly. But there's usually one that sort of takes predominance, and it has to do with how the structure is laid out. Like, ultimately, what is the story about?
The old man trying to get to the ship.
I'd have to watch it again. But I think it's because what he winds up needing is different from what he wants. Right? So what he ends up needing is really the relationship with the person. So I think, yeah, buddy love's probably an apt description.
So is the story, obviously you have to discuss the wants and the needs of the story, but the story is ultimately about the needs, right? Overall. And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. The why done it. The why done it.
All right, so this one is a little bit tricky, but it's basically like a mystery. Sometimes, sometimes there's like a crime or case involved, but ultimately it's less about solving the mystery and more about like learning something about human nature. So why someone did something, discovering more about like a person. Yeah.
Cool. So these are often mysteries. Film noir usually fits into this category. But in his book, as Nisha referenced, Snyder says that it's really not so much about trying to figure out who did it. It's really more interesting to talk about why they did it. So you often get, the good ones tend to get psychological and try to figure out the motives and the understanding. And we're uncovering dark, hidden secrets about people or things that we didn't realize. The film takes us along with the investigator and puts us into the film. So we're discovering these things alongside them. Okay? Did you have some examples?
So some of the examples in the book, they cited Citizen Kane as a good why done it. All the President's Men,
Okay.
Mystic River, I think Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah?
Rear Window would be a why done it.
Rear Window would be a why done it?
Yeah.
Okay. Shutter Island. Anyone see Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio? That would be a why done it. Really? You guys haven't seen that?
Clue. The movie.
Oh man.
Did they make a movie?
That might be a monster in the house.
That might, yeah.
Maybe. That's a fun movie. I like that movie. That's a great movie. Okay, so yeah, the important thing to remember about this one is just, it's the psychological, it's uncovering secrets, it's usually mysteries. Okay, thank you. The Fool, Triumphant. This is a fun one. I like this one.
Alright, if there was a log line for
Yes.
Fool Triumphant movies, it would be a fool takes on a powerful establishment and, despite the expectations of the audience and characters around him, succeeds. So like these movies have like a really powerful sense of victory. Usually they start off as kind of the village idiot. People don't really believe in them, but by the end you find out that they're very wise, and that was how they were able to succeed. Some examples are Forrest Gump, like Charlie Chaplin stuff, Napoleon Dynamite, Pros is one, Garfield 2.
What about the movie Underdog?
Underdog?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Dodgeball.
Bench warmers.
Yeah? So yeah, you've all seen this one before. Everyone loves an underdog, right? So this is the one about the fool or the underdog. Oftentimes there's an institution or something to fight against. And in the end, we discover that the fool was the wisest among us all. There's a great old Bill Murray movie that my family really liked when I was young called The Man Who Knew Too Little. And it's a case of mistakes. So Bill Murray plays this guy who's just a total fool. And he's misidentified as a spy. Someone thinks they're meeting a spy and doing like a drop-off or something, and they think that Bill Murray's the spy, and he's such an idiot he doesn't realize what's going on. And so he's given like this mission and this job and this case to like, and he doesn't realize, in the entire film, he doesn't realize what he's doing, and everyone's trying to stop him, and everyone's trying to like see if he succeeds, and everyone thinks he's some kind of like genius. Oh, he's such an amazing spy, and all that kind of stuff. And in the whole film, he never realizes what's going on, and it's really funny because in that scenario, it's almost, we're in on the joke, basically. Like we, the audience, we get the joke. Everyone else is like throwing their hands up in the air, but we get the joke because we have sort of the privileged position of it all. Yeah?
Would Ace Ventura be a full triumphant?
I'd have to watch that again. Maybe.
Because when you like mentioned Jim Carrey movies for like...
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, I could
Ace
see...
Ventura and Truman.
So, yeah, maybe. Maybe. I mean, I would say Dumb and Dumber is kind of a fool triumphant, but it's really more of a buddy love.
What about Pink Panther?
Pink Panther is a fool triumphant. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Cool. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
What would the Truman Show be?
Truman Show's a great movie is what it is.
Institutionalized, maybe?
What's that?
What is that?
Okay.
What is that, Katie?
Institutionalized are stories about groups, families, or institutions. And they normally explore it somewhat like the pros and cons of the group and like the herd mentality. And normally it's told from the perspective of a newcomer. Some examples are that they gave were like The One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The ones I thought of were Monsters University. They also said Animal House. The Royal Tenenbaums, and I was thinking about West Side Story. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, probably.
And, I also was thinking about Dead Poets Society.
Good. Yeah. Good. So these are about groups, institutions, or families. I think The Godfather would be a good example. Okay. Oftentimes the films honor the institutions, or they expose the issues with the institutions. Okay. And as Katie said, oftentimes it's told by someone who's going through it for the first time, or a newcomer, or someone who's going against the grain. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a great example. Has anyone watched that movie or read the book? I had to read it when I was like in junior high school. You guys didn't have to read it?
We're in Mr. Griffith's class.
My grandma lived with the guy who wrote that book.
No kidding.
Yeah.
1984. Okay, you read 1984, right? What is that? 1984 is a good example of institutionalized. Okay. Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, thank you, Katie. All right, and finally, the superhero. The superhero.
Tale two kids.
Okay. So the superhero is the exact opposite of dude with a problem. It is an extraordinary person in a regular world, and oftentimes they have like really like they have these extraordinary talents, or they have wonderful minds, and they're the whole idea of superheroes is that they feel they're misunderstood, or like they're out of place, or like they don't fit in with the rest of the world. Like in some ways they kind of have like a superiority complex or something like that. And then the way that you're supposed to make it more like be sympathetic with a superhero, because you're like Bruce Wayne, he has like millions of dollars, like why should I feel bad for him, is you have to like give them, like you need to put a stress on the pain or like the struggle that they're facing with these powers. Like you have to stress the consequences so that, you know, you don't have an unlikable character. Like with Marlon, you know, we had to like sympathize with him so that we knew like why he was so protective and why he was annoying. Yeah, and then it's also they're prioritizing their community over their personal comfort and their personal problems. And a lot of the, you know, like Spider-Man, all the Marvel movies, these are all superheroes. But the problem with like sequels or series is that you don't like establish something to sympathize with in the second movie or the third movie or fourth movie. You have the problem in the initial movie, and you can sympathize with that, but then the next movie comes out and there's no new struggle, there's no new reason to sympathize, so that's why those often flop. Except for apparently Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2 did all right.
Did really well
Yeah.
because there was a new problem
Yep.
for the superhero.
Yeah, they addressed that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Spider-Man
They
so,
do that in
Wait,
some of
the
the
old-
Marvel movies.
Some of them.
Like
Some of the
Iron-
Marvel movies aren't superhero movies in terms of story structure.
that's
That's
true.
true.
Yeah.
That's
With
true.
Spider-Man.
A lot of them are
American
Golden
Winter
Fleeces.
Soldier is-
Yeah.
Wait, which Spider-Man 2?
The old one.
Tobey Maguire?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire.
Prior
Which one was
Maguire.
that? Was that?
One is Doc Ock.
Doc Ock.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not that bad.
Yeah, so
I like
then
the third one.
Shh, guys.
the ones from Save the Cat, where the gladiator, where it's like this prestigious general is forced to be like a regular gladiator, and he feels like he just has more skills. He's like better than the lowly ones. And then Beautiful Minds, which is based off of a true story, where it's like this mathematical genius and how he's like misunderstood. He has to go on a journey of like personal discovery to like, realize stuff. And then I just put like Spider-Man, Captain America, like all of those ones for the classic superhero movies.
Great. So again, extraordinary individuals in the ordinary world. This is the only way to make them interesting. When you have a character like Superman who's perfect in every way, the only way to make him interesting is to throw him into a very ordinary world and see how he deals with it. Right? Okay? How will they deal with this ordinary world? How does this extraordinary person work in an ordinary world? That's the only way that it makes it interesting. Marisa's right. Sequels to these movies often don't work because the whole fun thing about superhero movies and the way that they work is that they all have an origin story. And going along with them on that journey as they become this great superhero is what's interesting and what allows us to empathize and be sympathetic to that hero. In the sequel, they're already at that point. And if you don't have that opportunity in the first act to create some empathy between your audience and the character, it's hard for us to really have the same feeling that we had for that character at the beginning. There's also usually a nemesis, a shadow, someone, an arch enemy that hero must fight against, and that, some type of, yin to their yang or whatever. So, yes.
What about movies that don't
Thank you.
really have a superhero but like still kind of follow that?
Yes. Still a superhero. It's not about having a superhero with a cape. It's about the story structure.
So Garfield Tale of Two Kitties is a superhero?
I don't know, Katie. I have not seen the film.
There's the rich Garfield and then there's the poor Garfield and then they like meet.
Is the poor Garfield extraordinary in an ordinary world?
The amount of lasagna that cat
No,
like that.
I don't believe that it is. Yes.
Well, I just before I ask him, I would say it's extraordinary that they got Bill Murray to do 2 films. Of that.
You know why, right?
Because he thought it was signed on with the Russo brothers.
Yes, he did.
Really?
Yes, because the director's name is Russo.
Yeah, he thought it was a different director.
But my question
Wait,
was,
which one?
I can't remember its name right now, which is funny because it's the one about the guy who loses his memory every 15 minutes.
I don't know the film.
Memento.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh.
That movie's
Okay, then never mind. I was just superhero. No, I was
Okay.
The one that
a
came
white
to
guy.
my mind was The Imitation Game, I think.
Yeah,
Really
that's
recent
the-
one about
Okay.
the code and the Nazis.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That one.
Okay.
When it was like,
Okay, so as you write your narrative stories, you need to ask yourself, what kind of a movie are you writing? Now, any film that you make, any story that you make can fit into any one of these genres. You don't have to have a superhero to write in the superhero format. You don't have to have something magical necessarily to write in the out-of-the-bottle format, okay? These are structures, okay? Don't say to yourself, oh, I have to write this monster I have to write a monster in the house because I have a monster. That's not true. You can tell any story, basically, in any one of the 10 formats. The question is, which kind of roadmap are you going to follow? Okay, these are guidelines to help you. Don't make the mistake of starting your film, writing it one way, and then halfway through your film, switching over and, oh, I've seen this work in other movies, I'm going to do this now, and all of a sudden you switch story types in the middle of your story. And then you read the story and we listen to it, and something's not right, and you know something's not right, but you can't figure out why. Well, it's because you completely changed story structures in the middle of your film. And you can't do that. Usually. Not effectively, anyway. Okay, and I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen with friends. I've seen it happen in college. I've seen it happen with a number of students. You got to pick a horse, and you got to stick with it. If you find yourself gravitating as you write towards a different type of story structure, that's fine, but it means you need to rewrite your beginning and stick with that story structure. Otherwise, it gets confusing for the audience, and we're not really sure which path we're going. This is one of the reasons why people really either love Blake Snyder and Save the Cat or hate Blake Snyder and Save the Cat. On the one hand, people say this is great, it's helpful, it makes me a better writer, there's a clear structure that I can follow. In fact, if you go to his website, he's since deceased, but the website is still there, savethecat.com, I think it is. If you go there, you can actually download what he calls beat sheets that actually have recommended page numbers for events in your film. Like, this should happen by page 15, this should happen by page 25, in what would be a typical 120-minute film, or a typical 30-minute film, or maybe an 8 to 10-minute film. I don't know if those beat sheets are there, but they might be. Very helpful resources to writers. So a lot of people are like, this is so helpful. I now understand films. Every film I see can be classified in one of these 10 films. On the other hand, you have some people who really hate this, who say this takes all the creativity out of writing, this is formulaic, this is why everything that Hollywood produces is exactly the same, so on and so forth. I think there's truth to both sides. I think there's a lot of writers, new writers in particular, that can really benefit from understanding why good stories work. It's because they have these moving parts and these gears that fit in a certain way. And when you have stories that don't work, it's oftentimes because they aren't falling within some of these categories. So I think there's a lot of truth to what Blake Snyder says. That being said, don't be so married to the roadmap that you're afraid to try something new and different. Being that we're kind of new screenwriters, however, I would recommend that you learn how to ride your bicycle before you take the training wheels off, so to speak. So it's a good roadmap to follow, especially when we haven't done a whole lot of it yet. I still follow the roadmap, or try to, when I do my writing, because it's solid story structure. It's proven time and time again, just like the monomyth, right? So in the time that we have left, I've got about 5-ish minutes. I'm going to put the big list back up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my laser pointer here, and I'm going to point around my room to my posters, because I try to use them whenever I can to justify their expense. And I want you to tell me which one of the 10 story structures is the film. Okay, so let's start over here with E.T.
Buddy love.
Buddy Love. Transformers movie. I'm so excited. I'm going to see it in theaters tonight, one night only. They're doing a one-night-only showing of the original Transformers movie. I got my T-shirt on. I'm so amped. I'm really excited. You haven't seen it, probably.
Golden Fleece.
But it's a Golden Fleece.
Oh.
It's Golden Fleece. Love that movie. It's got Orson Welles.
Yep, he voices
Unicorn. That's right. Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars.
Golden Fleece.
Golden Fleece. Golden Fleece. Cast of characters trying to achieve something. Right? Jaws.
Monster in the
Monster of the House. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones.
Golden Fleece.
Golden Fleece. We're going after a treasure there of the Ark of the Covenant. Ghostbusters.
Institutionalized.
Ghostbusters. What do you think?
Institutionalized.
What do you think?
Superhero?
The full triumphant.
There's a lot of elements in Ghostbusters. You've got a Golden Fleece because you have a team of characters trying to accomplish something, right? You've also kind of got a superhero element there because they're kind of extraordinary characters in an ordinary world. On the other hand, they're also kind of fool triumphants because they're kind of stupid-ish characters who end up somewhat triumphant. And you also have some buddy love elements going on there. So there's quite a hodgepodge going on. I think mostly it's a Golden Fleece because that's where it really seems to fit all the categories, right? Team of characters trying to accomplish something, right? But there are certainly other elements that are being pulled in there. Golden Fleece is one of those ones that can incorporate a lot of other elements, which is nice. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This is a hard one. People argue about it all the time.
Rites of Passage.
Rites of Passage?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he's like,
I don't want to spoil Ferris Bueller.
well, by the end.
Is it a rites of passage? Is it a serious life problem? Then we're trying to fix it and then we learn to accept it? But that doesn't mean, just because it's a coming of age story doesn't mean it's a rite of passage. Remember, it's about the story structure.
Maybe the fool triumphant.
Fool triumphant? Why?
Because they're kind of like, oh, he's just like this dumb kid who's just like ditching class and then
Right.
doing all these extraordinary things that are like actually fulfilling to him.
Okay.
What
Is
about-
he a dumb kid?
Monster in the House.
What about Buddy Love?
Buddy Love?
Well,
Why?
we don't think
Because there's his friend, the Cameron, and
Cameron, him and his friend, true.
Yeah.
Okay, but is that the crux of the story? Is the whole thing about him and Cameron?
Isn't it mostly about the prince? And a lot about the principal too.
No, it's all about Varys.
No, but it could be superhero.
Golden Fleece? What are they trying to get? What's the treasure?
Trying to take it easy.
Trying to take the best day? The pursuit
No,
of...
it's a monster.
What's the log line say? One man's pursuit...
Yeah, it says it right.
Yeah.
One man's, what is it, struggle to take it easy?
Wouldn't it be?
You can make an argument for a lot of these things. You can make an argument for a buddy love. You can make an argument for the fool triumphant. You can make an argument for institutionalized, and you can make an argument for superhero. He's an extraordinary character in an ordinary world who has a nemesis, if you've seen the film.
What about Monster in the House? They're all trying to
No,
get
it's not a
a
monster in the house.
What about dude with a problem?
No, it's not a dude with a problem. He doesn't have any problems.
What about Rite of Passage?
He doesn't have any problems.
Rite of
He's got no problems. It's more a superhero than because he's extraordinary and he doesn't have any problems. Back to the Future.
We skipped over Die Hard.
Golden Fleece, Die Hard.
Dude with the problem.
Dude with the problem. Shawshank Redemption.
I've never seen
Isn't it
Institutionalized. Institutionalized. A prison movie. The Sandlot.
Buddy love.
Golden Fleece.
Golden Fleece. They're going after the ball. That's the treasure. Team of characters.
I haven't seen it.
What? Scott Pilgrim versus the world.
Golden Fleece.
No.
Superhero?
Superhero.
Really, yeah.
He's a superhero. Think about it. Extraordinary character, ordinary world.
He plays the guitar.
Nemesis, arch nemesis that he has to fight, big baddie. Pros, we decided was a fool triumphant, right?
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
Golden Fleece. Oh.
Depends on which film we're talking about.
Yeah.
Harry Potter 1 is what?
Stupid.
Superhero.
I think it's
Oh no, it's dude with the
dude with a problem because he doesn't know anything about the wizard
superhero.
world.
It's a superhero.
It's superhero. 'cause
He's
it's
extraordinary.
Regular to wizard world.
Yeah. And he has a nemesis, right? As the films advance, remember, as the films advance, they switch it. They knowingly switch story structures because superheroes don't work next time around because we need to empathize with the characters. So they turn it into Golden Fleeces. Just the Harry Potters or Golden Fleeces. You'll notice I have a lot of Golden Fleeces on my wall. I tend to like Golden Fleeces. I am drawn to those types of stories. It's a Wonderful Life. Anyone seen it?
Buddy Love? No.
Not Buddy Love.
Wait, isn't it out of the bottle?
Out of the bottle. It's an out of the bottle. Gravity.
Monster in the House.
No.
Out of the bottle. Maybe.
No.
Golden Fleece.
Amanda.
Dude with a problem?
Dude with a problem.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the problem is that she's like...
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a dude with a problem.
Do that. The problem.
Wizard of Oz, we said was what?
Golden Fleece.
Golden Fleece. Ninja Turtles. Anyone want to take a guess?
Golden Fleece.
I'd say
Buddy love?
it's a Golden Fleece or a superhero. It's one of the two. Veronica Mars. If you know anything about Veronica Mars, that's a Why Done It. That's a Why Done It.
Raccoon Tunes Buddy love.
Raccoon Tunes is a buddy love. Very good. And let's do Napoleon Dynamite. Somebody said it. What was it?
It's
So it could be a Fool Triumphant.
Well, that's what we were covering.
What else could it be?
Dude with a problem.
Superhero?
I would call it a superhero.
Dude with a problem.
It might be an institutionalized in some way, shape, or form because it's about the community.
I have a
It's
question.
about this little farm town. And Dead Poet Society, anyone?
Institutionalized.
Institutionalized.
I have a question.
Yes.
When we're looking at The Princess Bride, do we think of it as like the grandpa and the son telling the story, or do we just talk about the story?
Which one of the elements do you need to effectively tell the story? Do you need the grandpa and the son to effectively tell the story? Then they're not important.
Okay. What if it was just the
So it's
grandpa
a-
reading the story?
You still don't need him to tell the story.
That's like Bob Ross.
Okay, so for Tuesday, you are going to pitch. You must be prepared to pitch. You're each pitching your own idea, regardless as to however it shakes out when you make your films. You're each pitching your own idea. Not a bad idea to have a backup plan, just saying. Not a bad idea to have a backup plan in your back pocket. Okay? You must have in your pitch, hopefully your pitch is, 90 seconds, 2 minutes less, 90 seconds or less, okay? You must have a title, you must have a log line, you must start with your log line, okay? Remember that I'm grading you based on the P's, right? Your actual preparation, your actual presentation, as well as your participation as you give feedback to other people, okay? We're going to dissect these, we're going to tear them apart, we're going to build them back up, make them better, stronger, faster than before. We have the technology. No one? Okay, that was a great reference.
Robocop.
I
No,
thought you were referencing
Bionic
Kanye
Man.
West.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so be prepared. Be prepared for that. Okay?